All right, guys, let's have the conversation. What's going on with these crazy torque numbers that we're seeing these days on dynos? Man, it's off its head. It's getting worse and worse, and no disrespect to all the guys out there who have dynos, but when you use your tools, you've got to learn how to use them. You've got to understand the mathematics, how the machine works. First thing, you got to learn how to turn it on and off. Second thing, how to use it, operate it, maintain it. The more you know about your tools, the easier it is to do your job. So, I get a lot of guys when we do our videos and they start going, oh, that's low torque numbers. Oh, that torque's not high enough, or that torque's too high, or we very rarely get too high, but always get too low. And I always get someone with an LS1 that's making 320 kilowatts with 700, 800 newton meters of torque, and it's just like, yeah, no, you don't make it. And you try to explain it, and it's like getting blood out of a stone. They think because it's printed on this elusive dyno sheet that it's the real deal. Let me tell you, dynos can be fudged. They can be tricked. They are just a mathematic building machine. They're basically a calculator connected to your car. And if you have the wrong numbers in there, it will punch out the wrong numbers on the other end. Don't be fooled. It is not a legal document that is like it's like $100 note is $100. It's not like that. Dyno printouts are the biggest crock of crap in this industry that you can see. The reality of it is, you want the real numbers, you go to a drag strip, you run the car, you weigh the car, you work out the mathematics. Mile an hour never lies, okay? And you always get the big drag racers get on the pages and say to people, show us your mile an hour. That's the real telltale sign, and people don't understand it. But the reality of it is that mile an hour and weight of the vehicle equals horsepower. But how are people getting these bogus numbers? So let's have a look at this car, for example. We've just completed this HSV Maloo LS3 engine, got a Crow Cam, 1287 camshaft in it, set of Blackwell CNC cylinder heads, and this combination always makes around that 369, 370 kilowatts, around 590, 600 newton meters. Pretty consistent, makes it all the time. But I thought this video, let's show you how to dodge up the torque numbers. And when I say, I'm probably using the wrong words, not dodge up, mathematically mess up the torque numbers, because at the end of the day, the dyno is a calculator that is backwards calculating the numbers. So there's some really good videos on YouTube. I'm not a mathematician, so I don't dive too deep into the numbers. I'm just going to tell you the reasons why and what's going on. So RPM, let's start again. So horsepower and torque is backwards calculated from an RPM value of 5252. Now, the dyno is basically doing a reverse calculation from your RPM to determine your power and your torque. That's how it does it. So you'll see people when they put the car on the dyno, sometimes they don't have RPM on the dyno at all. And if they don't have RPM on the dyno, it will sometimes do, well, I know other dynos do a calculated torque thing, but dyno dynamics, you'll have a thing called tractive effort, which is basically the force required to turn the hub or the roller. Now that's probably the most mathematically correct way of determining the actual torque. But the problem is that motive force, or that tractive effort number, is a raw value. It's nothing. It means nothing. It means nothing in the world of anybody, and it's not even comparable to anything out there other than what you do on your dyno. So, it's great to use it in-house as a reference, but not so good when you want to put it online and publish the figures, because people will be like, wow, what's this 1250 newton meters and all that and so on. It means nothing. So the most important thing when you put a car on a dyno, any dyno for that matter, if you want to get the correct torque readings, you must have an accurate RPM reading, because it is where it is calculating back from. So in this case, being an automatic transmission, we are using an ignition pickup. So we have this connected directly to the ignition coil on the engine, and that is giving us the exact RPM value that the engine is operating at. Now, if it was a manual transmission car where it has a 1-to-1 direct drive, through the transmission, you can do, well, sorry, I'm not going to say one-to-one, it doesn't matter. As long as you don't have clutch slip, and it is a direct drive manual transmission with no other fancy things like DSGs and all that sort of stuff, like a proper manual transmission connected to your rear wheels, you can do a thing called a tacho ratio. So you can basically drive the car at 100 kilometers an hour on the dyno, and you look at 100, and basically you lock the dyno at 100 Ks, and you look at what the actual engine RPM is, and you can punch those two values into the dyno, and that will give you a backwards calculation back to the dyno what the actual engine RPM is. Now, provided you do all your runs in the same gear, it will give you accurate, solid numbers. Now, if you have an automatic transmission, you can't do that because a converter has converter slip. In some automatic transmissions when you can lock the converter, you can get away with it, provided it's 100% locked. You can sneak it, you can maneuver it, you can make it work, it gets you pretty close, but it's still not right. So with an automatic transmission, you must always have the inductive pickup on there. So whether you're picking it up from your ignition, or your injectors, your ignition coil, or you have an inductive clamp attached to the actual ignition lead, that is the only way on an automatic transmission car you can get the correct RPM value. Now, as I said earlier, the power and torque is calculated from the RPM. Okay, also the dyno has a load cell in there and it does all that sort of stuff, but we're not going to go too in depth about how that side of it works. That's a whole other world. But the big thing is how is it calculating the torque? The dyno is calculating the power, but the torque is a mathematic number that is calculated from your engine RPM. So if you're following along and you're starting to get the idea of what I'm talking about, if you don't have the correct RPM value in the dyno, so the math is correct, you're gonna get messed up torque numbers. You know, you who's watching right now who probably has an LS1, you know, and you're making 900 Newton meters of torque and you're naturally aspirated, well, no, that's not possible. If you had a blower on it, maybe, not naturally aspirated, not an LS1, not a hope in the world. So let's have a look at the car. Let's have a look at what we've done. So this power figure right here, 377 kilowatts. Now let's ignore the kilowatts because they're all, you know, as close as F can be. But let's look at the torque values. You got 602 Newton meters, 672 Newton meters, 733, 782. But why? Why is it reading a higher value? Well, let's have a look. So the real run, as in the one with the ignition clamp with the actual engine RPM, is this one here, 602 Newton meters of torque. That is absolutely what this engine makes. Now, what I've done as a test, I've changed the tacho to a tacho ratio, and I've basically told the dyno, and this is basically, this car at 100 kilometers an hour sits on about 3,000 RPM. That's about right, provided you don't lean on it, because obviously the converter will run away. But let's just punch the numbers in. Now you can see we've picked up 70 Newton meters of torque, but the power hasn't changed. We picked up more torque, but then I thought, you know what, let's go and change the number to 2,800 RPM at 100 kilometers. Now we're at 733 Newton meters. And the same, 2,600 RPM, and now we're at 782. So what happens is, and you can see on the graph, this is the actual, the purple line is the actual value of the vehicle that we've tuned with the correct ignition clamp on there, sorry. And it starts the run at around 3,700 RPM, which you'd expect it. It's got a big converter in it. So it comes on and it runs all the way through. But you can see what happens here when we go to a roller tacho, where we're mathematically working it out. The power and RPM, everything changes, but the big thing is that the horsepower, or sorry, the torque is increasing. Now, torque, to make more torque, you have to make more power, okay? People always ravel on about torque is the most elusive number in the world. Well, in actual fact, power is, because without power, you don't have torque. So you have to make more engine power at a lower RPM to give you a higher torque reading. So you know, it's basically the more power you can make down low, the more torque your engine makes, you know, and that's basically why people love big cubes, because big cubes have lots of power at a low RPM, and that allows them to make more torque. Just like a diesel engine, for example, a turbo diesel engine, well, they don't RPM. Well, lucky for them is because they only rev to like 3,000 revs. Well, the more power you can make under, you know, that figure, well, the more torque you make. That's why a 79 series Land Cruiser, you know, it can make 150 kilowatts, but it's making like close to 600 Newton meters of torque. Well, that's correct, because it's making it at a low RPM. So the moral, or I guess the thing I'm trying to get across here is, you know, if the dyno operator puts your car on the dyno and they don't have the ignition clamp correctly or hooked up to your engine to give the actual RPM, then how are they getting the RPM? So there's only two ways, well, there's only really one way they can get the RPM, is that they're basically mathematically doing the equation from the rear wheel speed to engine RPM. And that engine RPM would then punch out the torque number. So, you know, if you've got a car at a shop and they're saying, you know, that's the real torque and it's an auto car and they didn't have a clamp on it, you know, the only other way they can pull the RPM is via an OBD port if it has the diagnostic available, which is in that case using OBD or ignition clamp and so on. Well, that would work too. But a lot of companies out there leave their dyno set to tacho ratio and they never change it because they always tune in kilometres, or always have Ks on the bottom, and they get their RPM from their aftermarket or their whatever they're using to tune the car. So they don't really care what the dyno says, they're just looking at their computer. But the downside is that they print off the dyno sheet, they give it back to you, you've got an incorrectly calibrated RPM signal, the math is completely wrong, and all of a sudden you've got an LS1 that made 300 kilowatts with 600 plus Newton meters of torque, which is just absolutely bogus. It's just impossible. It cannot happen. I always vomit in my mouth every time someone gets on my pages and tells me about it. I'm just like, oh, brother, really? No, it's not the case. You know what I mean? I hope this video has given you more light. Now, if you want to explore or do some homework and look up the whole 52 RPM mathematics and all that sort of stuff, there's a lot of really good technical videos on YouTube. Look them up. There's lots of people, and I'm sure people watching this now will probably jump on and give you the mathematics equation. I'm not going to do it because it's a total head bomb when you start doing it, and I want to keep this, you know, we're all simple people, let's just keep it simple. So the rule of thumb is you want to make more torque, you got to make more horsepower, and you got to make it at a lower RPM. That's why engines that rev high don't actually produce, you know, lots of torque. You know, like a NASCAR, for example, you know, they rev to like 9,500, 10,000 RPM, but you're actually fine, they don't really make that much torque. Because the higher the engine RPM is, the less torque you actually produce. And anything that wants to race around a racetrack at high RPM, they don't want it to make torque in the low areas because, you know, torque breaks things. So you want to keep the torque low, keep the RPM high, and keep the horsepower high, and that's how you make a fast car. So, but anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope I didn't upset anybody with this video. My intentions are not to do that. They are simply to educate people who don't quite understand what's going on out there. And at the end of the day is, you are the customer and you do believe what you get given, and it's not expected you to know about this, because if you knew about it, you'd be doing it yourself. I guess the big thing is that the shops who give these stupid numbers, you are the guys out there who need to pull your heads in and start giving the right numbers, calibrate your equipment, use it how it was designed to be used, give the customer the exact proper stuff. Like, just don't give them stupid numbers. And, you know, and if you're giving them these numbers, like, God, you got to have a look at yourself. You surely understand you look like an idiot. Like, just don't do it. It's embarrassing for yourself, and, you know, you go and publicise these numbers and they're not right, and it's just like, what is this crap? So, but anyway, guys, I've rambled on too much now. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks again, and I will absolutely see you on the next one. Bye.